There are some movies that I completely understand why everybody loves, but then there are others where I genuinely don't understand what everyone else is seeing. So today, we're going to be looking at 10 movies that I think are way more critically acclaimed and popular than they have any right to be. You already saw the movies on the thumbnail, and trust me, there are plenty more here. But before you get mad at me for anything on this list, I understand that these are classics with millions of fans and people that love them dearly, but these are just my opinions, and I know that you have some too, so be sure to leave your most overrated films in the comments below. But with that being said, let's hop straight into it. At number 10, I have Up. The way this list is ranked is by how big the gap is between my opinion of a movie and the general public's consensus opinion on it. And so for a movie like Up, it's generally looked at as one of Pixar's best movies, and even for me, I'd still call it a great to really good movie, but I don't think it's anywhere close to the top tier of Pixar. As for why, I think a lot of it comes down to the fact that the film is heavily carried by the first 15 minutes. And don't get me wrong, I'm not critiquing it for having a really good sequence to start the movie. That's a great thing. That's never going to be a bad thing. But in my opinion, it set itself up for failure by starting so strong emotionally and thematically that it couldn't possibly maintain that throughout the rest of the runtime. That's not my only issue. I think the villain of the movie, Charles Muntz, is kind of forgettable. There's nothing inherently wrong with his character or his motivations. He just doesn't strike me as a particularly memorable character like a lot of the other Pixar villains do. Plus, I feel like it tries to juggle a lot of different themes without ever diving deep into any one of them, which makes them all feel sort of underbaked and underdeveloped. So still a good movie overall, just not anywhere near the prestigious stuff that Pixar's been putting out for decades. At number 9, I have the original Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. It's the original, it's iconic, and I can understand that, but I also think there's a heavy nostalgia factor for most people when they talk about this movie. If you grew up reading the comics without being able to see them adapted on the big screen, I'm sure this felt like heaven when you watched it for the first time, but I never had that connection to it, so judging it independently as a film without any emotional attachment to it, it's fine. I can admit it has more style in one frame than most superhero movies we get today, but the problem is that I just don't love Sam Raimi's style that much. I also can't wrap my head around the fact that all the high schoolers in this movie walking around look like they're in their mid-30s. And that's not a huge issue or anything, but I would be lying if I said it didn't affect my experience while watching it. I don't love the chemistry between Tobey Maguire and Kirsten Dunst. It feels kind of stiff. It does get better as the franchise goes along, but speaking of things getting better as the franchise goes, that's kind of the issue here. Like the fact that its sequel is one of the greatest comic book movies ever made just kind of casts a shadow on this and only hurts it. As for some pros, Willem Dafoe is great. I like some of the action sequences and I do love the score, but it's just never done all that much for me, and I don't understand why it's regarded as one of the best superhero movies ever. Next up, I have Beetlejuice. I think that at some point along the way, somebody started to say that they liked Tim Burton's style just to be different, and then more people started saying it, and more people, to the point where the pro-Burton people were the majority. And now I'm left standing here saying, how do you all like this guy's movie so much? This movie is just so wacky, and it's not that wacky can't be good. There's sometimes fun to be had, but this is just the kind of wacky that's exhausting. Like, it's the kind of film that drains my energy so much while watching it that I feel like I need to take a nap afterwards. And the weirdest part about this is that the movie's sequel, Beetlejuice, that came out a couple years ago, I actually really liked that movie, and I think that's an indication that I don't have a problem with the visual style or the world this movie takes place in. I just don't love how over the top this original film is, and I think a tamer version of it would have worked a lot better, which, lucky for me, is pretty much a perfect description of its sequel. But at number 7, I have Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. This is a film that's definitely considered a classic from the early 70s, and for good reason. Gene Wilder's performance is iconic, there's some great sequences, but aside from that, it just loses me. The main issue here for me is that the movie understands that Roald Dahl's original book is charming and weird, but instead of finding a way to blend the charm and the weirdness, it just dives headfirst into the weirdness. Like the scene on the boat, what was that? I feel like I'm on drugs. And I know I just complimented Gene Wilder a minute ago for his performance, because for the most part, he is really good, but there are also still moments that he goes so over the top. It leaves me scratching my head saying, has he forgotten what movie he's in? And also, this is gonna sound counterintuitive because I just got done bashing Tim Burton, but if there's one thing that man knows how to do, it's blend weirdness and charm. And so for that reason, I think his version of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory is vastly superior to this older one. So overall, there are definitely flashes of greatness, and on paper, I can see why people would enjoy this movie. There's just not enough good for me to give the movie the reputation it has. Next up is How the Grinch Stole Christmas. This is one of the rare instances on this list where it's not a movie that's considered an all-time great that I just kind of really like. It's one of these movies that's considered, I guess, really solid to maybe pretty good that I just absolutely despise. When you make a Christmas movie, you have to capture the feeling of the holiday in order for your story to work, and this movie has nothing of the sort. It's just such a weird world that I feel so uncomfortable being a part of. Like the Who's with their noses up like this. Am I supposed to enjoy being around these characters? No, they're unsettling and they make me uncomfortable. And then for Jim Carrey, I'm usually a pretty big fan of his. I think that he's one of the better comedic performers we've gotten in our generation, especially when he improvises, but there's a fine line between letting an actor improvise and turning on the camera without any script written down, and this movie very much feels like the second one. I found the Grinch to be annoying, hard to be around, and even after his heart grows or whatever happens and he becomes a good guy, I still don't like him and can't root for him. I think that's a sign of inefficient character development and an overall lackluster script, and for those reasons, I just can never get into this film. Moving into the top 5, I have The Matrix. This is one that I don't really have much to say about it. I don't have some huge personal vendetta against it. It didn't do anything particular to make me dislike it. I just see it regarded and highly praised as one of the best action films of all time, and I just don't get that. It plays with a few interesting ideas, like the idea of everything being a simulation and being able to break free from that, and that's interesting, sure. But I don't know, I've just never viewed this as anything more than just your run-of-the-mill action flick. I will admit, I haven't seen any of this film's sequels, but to be completely honest, I have no desire to. I know that they're all considered pretty big steps down from the original, so as someone who doesn't even like that one, I just feel no personal connection to this franchise or desire to watch these films. Like I said, and as you can tell by my lack of detail when talking about it, I don't have anything particular to say about this film in terms of what it does wrong. I just don't understand why it's rated so high. But at number 4, I have Raiders of the Lost Ark. I think we're getting to the territory on this list now where I'm throwing out some heavy hitters, and for this one in particular, I just don't think it comes anywhere close to the Temple of Doom or The Last Crusade. I may regret saying this, and I'm already kind of hesitant to in the first place, but I think Raiders of the Lost Ark is closer to Kingdom of the Crystal Skull in terms of how well it works as a story than it is to something like The Last Crusade. As for my reasoning, I just think it's a B- version of an A+ concept, a globe-trotting adventure about an archaeologist with a whip and a fedora. That sounds awesome, but this movie just kind of moves at a sluggish pace and trudges along until it reaches a finale that in my opinion makes no sense at all. And to a certain extent, I've seen it talked about a little bit by some other people, but the finale of this movie just makes so little sense it's unbelievable. Indiana Jones had no impact on this story. He might as well have just stayed home. If the Nazis are just going to open the Ark and it'll melt their faces off no matter what happens, what was the point of him being there? Everything would have played out exactly how it did. Sure, we would have missed out on some pretty good action sequences, I'll admit the film has those, but it wouldn't have made that big of a difference, and that's a really big problem. Obviously, this is still Steven Spielberg and Harrison Ford at the peaks of their careers, so it has that going for it no matter what. But it's just a frustrating watch overall for me, not just because of how much I wish I liked it, but also because of how great its sequels are. At number 3, I have Alien. When you look at the most iconic horror thrillers from the 20th century, you can't go very far down that list before you reach Alien, and that fact completely baffles me. I actually want to start with a couple positives here. I think the production design on this film is way ahead of its time. I think the design of the alien looks pretty fantastic, and I do love the idea that they saved the cat, but aside from that, woof, is this a hard movie to get through? It tries to establish that sort of like impending looming threat vibe, that feeling of dread that John Carpenter's The Thing kind of mastered, but I think it falls on its face in doing so. I never once felt unsettled or uncomfortable in the slightest. I never felt pulled into the story, and then Sigourney Weaver is fine as Ripley. Her performance, at least in my opinion, was nothing to write home about in the slightest, and I thought the movie just kind of moved at a pace that was way too slow. When you set a movie in one location with only a handful of characters, you have to do so much work to make that story compelling, and I think they just failed to do so here, plain and simple. If you had done that, it would be sort of like taking a slow drive through Paris, France. You're like, oh, look at that, that's awesome, oh, that's super cool. But then you take that same super slow drive through, I don't know, rural Arkansas, and you're just like, this is moving pretty slow. Can we speed it up a little bit? That's what this movie felt like to me. I haven't seen the sequel Aliens. I do actually really want to watch that just because of how great I hear that it is, but my expectations for it and how much I expect to like it have definitely taken a hit based on my experience with the original. At number 2, I have The Nightmare Before Christmas. This is going to be one that's definitely based on personal taste for me, and for that reason, it's going to be objectively hard to defend with logic and reason. But if there's one thing to know about me in this wide world of movies that we all know and love, it's that there's nothing I despise more than stop motion animation. I can't explain why, I don't know why, but that stuff scares me. I'm definitely going to make a separate video about this, probably come Christmas time, just because of all those stop-motion Christmas movies that still haunt my dreams. But as for this one, I keep trying to give it a chance year after year after year. I really do want to like it. It seems like a movie I'd enjoy, but it just keeps falling short for me. It's kind of like the Grinch complaint I had earlier, that the whole vibe of the movie just kind of feels off to me. And even aside from that, the story itself theoretically should work on paper. It sounds like an interesting idea and premise, but it just, for me, has never worked at all. But overall, for this one, it's just a variety of all these different factors that are definitely more based on my personal taste, and for that reason are harder to defend and I would imagine pretty hard to understand, but they all just come together to make me really dislike this movie. Before number one, I just want to give a few quick honorable mentions to films that I definitely think are overrated, just not quite enough to make this top 10 list. I'm just going to fly through these real quick. I have Moonlight, First Encounters of the Third Kind, A Christmas Story, Psycho, The Princess Bride, and The Usual Suspects. But coming in at number one, out of all the movies I've ever seen, the one I personally think is the most overrated is Fight Club. I waited a long time to watch this movie. I'd been kind of working my way through the greatest hits of American cinema, and I got to Fight Club, but I intentionally held off because I saw that it was coming back to theaters. And so I bought my ticket, settled in, expecting a great movie, and what I got was, I don't know, one of the more unpleasant experiences I've had in a theater in a while. I think it should be prefaced before I give my reasons why that I knew the twist ending of this movie long before I actually saw it. I probably found out about it years before. And so I knew that would probably affect my viewing experience, or it would definitely affect it. But I thought it could be in kind of a fun way, to where I can experience the movie for the first time, witnessing the story without ever having seen it before, but also having the knowledge of the ending to the point where I can pick up on the little clues that only someone that's rewatching it could be able to understand. I thought that would be fun, personally, but what I came to find out was that the twist ending ended up having zero effect on my experience with this movie in the slightest. I really disliked the story. I could never get hooked on it at all. I really don't like the visual style of the film. I love David Fincher as a director. I think all of his work is really great stuff, and I love most of his movies, but this just feels like an absolute miss creatively for him. And then I think it tries to be so heavy-handed with its themes of consumerism and masculinity that it gets so in your face about it that it completely turned me off to what the movie was trying to say. And then the ending, like I said, it was never going to hit me quite as hard as it hit other people, but even after watching the whole movie and experiencing the context of it, as someone who knew the truth of what was actually happening, it still felt completely random and out of left field, and being completely honest, kinda stupid. So I didn't love it, and for that reason, Fight Club is my pick for the most overrated movie I've ever seen in my life. I know this is a controversial list, and you probably have some thoughts about my picks. If you want to talk about it, that's great, but if you also have some picks of your own for your most overrated movies of all time, I'd love to hear them in the comments down below. I genuinely want to hear from and talk to each one of you. If you want to help out the channel and get more Top 10 Tuesday, be sure to like and subscribe. But with that being said, thank you so much for watching, and God bless.